Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizenghausen. July 15th, here are the main news stories at this moment. First of all, happy Ukrainian Statehood Day, dear Ukrainians. Ukraine will remain strong, free and independent, and its people will remain unbreakable. I wish us all victory and peace and prosperity to our beloved Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. And today there is a lot of good news, so it worked out, and that's wonderful. So Ukraine has decided to close not only the Sea of Azov but also the Black Sea to Russians. The next stage of the Unmanned Systems Forces operation has been launched precisely for Ukrainian Statehood Day. Now it's already in the Black Sea, wrote Modern overnight. Today, the first 20 ships have been hit already in the Black Sea. The total result over 10 days is 136 units of the shadow fleet of the Russian Federation. It's simply incredible. There were 116 Shadow Fleet ships in the Sea of Azov. Well, the first stage there is complete, and they've moved on to the second stage to the Black Sea. Today, 17 oil tankers, 2 gas carriers, and 1 tugboat. They have already been hit in the Black Sea. And let me remind you, Russia has already officially closed the Sea of Azov to navigation and closed the Kerch Strait. Well, here, a real catastrophe could happen for the Russians. A real catastrophe, and I hope it does happen. Especially against the backdrop of strikes on oil refineries. And those strikes are not stopping either. In the Sea of Azov, the forces of unmanned systems have essentially been destroyed. This is Russia's internal feeder fleet. These are relatively small river and sea vessels, up to 7,000 tons, which used to travel between ports between the Azov and Black Seas. Now the strike is shifting to the next level, if you can call it that, of the Russian Federation's logistics system. At the huge sea tankers that export Russian oil and petroleum products through the Black Sea to the global market. As a result, all ports on the Sea of Azov are blocked. Rostov-on-Don, Azov, Taganrog, Yeysk, Temryuk. The situation in the Azov Sea has been dealt with. Now the big hunt begins. Just imagine how that news made the underground Botox slug in the Kremlin explode with rage. Well, the big hunt means big tankers. We're about to get to them. It's really interesting. And at the same time, there are reports of shutdowns. Every few days, a major Russian oil refinery stops operating. So Gazprom's largest oil refinery has shut down after a drone attack. Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat has halted the processing of both oil and gas condensate. As of today, they are no longer processing anything. Reuters is reporting this. And you know what? This is the 5th major refinery to shut down this month. Previously, Rosneft's Syzran refinery shut down on July 12th, the Saratov refinery on July 8th, the Omsk refinery, the largest in Russia, on July 6th, and Lukoil's Nizhny Novgorod Nefteorg Syntez on July 2nd. That's 5 major refineries since the beginning of the month. The more often they hold emergency meetings about fuel issues, the faster Russian refineries shut down. What a miserable situation, right? And what did Putin say again? Ukrainian drones are only meant to make Russians anxious and maybe to ruin someone's vacation in the south. So are Russians feeling anxious now? Did someone's vacation get ruined? Does he really not understand that by the end of the summer he won't have a single major refinery left? There just won't be any. By the way, about the fuel. Fuel was supplied to the ports of Azov by several routes. And there are big problems with those routes as well. There were basically 2 main routes. Refineries in the Volga region, and a separate flow came from refineries in the Krasnodar region. I'll name them for you now and you'll realize they sound familiar because all these refineries have recently been visited by our drones. So, from the Volga region, there were the Volgograd, Saratov, Syzran and Novokuybishevsk refineries. They all got what was coming to them. A separate flow came from the refineries in the Krasnodar region. A Fipsky refinery, Ilsky, Tuapsinsky and Slavyansky. Most of them have also been shut down or are operating only very, very partially. This is also temporary. Sooner or later they'll all stop, as they say. And now the Russians have encountered another colossal problem, one they hadn't thought about before either. Logistics overload. Where are they supposed to put the fuel now that was being transported by Azov tankers? Railway? Well, it can partially replace the fleet, but it's much more expensive and it's overloaded with military cargo, coal and grain, which also has its own problems. One small Azov tanker, with a capacity of 7,000 tons, replaced about 100 railway tank cars. There in the Sea of Azov, 116 tankers have been affected. Where are you going to get 10,000 tank cars? And it's not just tank cars that are needed there. Locomotives, loading stations, sidings, available schedules for movement. Where, in other words, a logistics collapse occurs. A complete one. But the devastation in the Sea of Azov was only a prelude. The main operation was the blockade of the Black Sea. This is where the Baldy's hands and legs will be shaking just like they were shaking on stage recently. I wonder if the Kremlin even realized that after the Sea of Azov, they'd also have the Black Sea shut off. I think maybe they did understand, but there was nothing they could do about it. Now we're going to move on to the most important part, but first, let me remind you, friends, don't forget, subscribe to this channel. It's important for the channel's growth, and you can do it right now. Subscribe without delay. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda. Together, it will be much easier for us to do this. And I won't get tired of reminding you. Everyone who subscribes to this channel gets soft and silky hair. So go ahead and subscribe. In the Sea of Azov, we struck at the internal routes of Russian logistics. In the Black Sea, we hit the main export arteries. So in the Black Sea, Magyar's hunt will be just royal. There are real monsters there. The monster tankers working for Russia are of the Handysize, Aframax, and Suezmax classes. That is, if in the Sea of Azov the carrying capacity is 7,000 tons, then in the Black Sea, a Suezmax tanker can be up to 170,000 tons. Imagine 30 Azov tankers. It can hold a huge, fat fish which will be completely hauled out. That's why the loss of a single large sea vessel, in terms of cargo effect, is comparable to damaging dozens of river tankers. So how many tankers does Russia have in total, or more precisely, how many tankers serve the Russian Federation? Well, I looked at the statistics, and up to 100 tankers enter Novorossiysk every month. But after the hunting season opens, about 90% of them will simply forget once and for all what it means. Now, after these strikes, believe me, the tanker owners are turning them back. No one wants to come under attack. Of course, there will be hotheads, desperate adventurers, but their enthusiasm will be cooled by precise Ukrainian drones. Who would want to lose a tanker worth tens of millions? I told the Russians that it would only get worse. We read the fairy tale at night. Pushkin's tale about the fisherman and the fish. Did you want to grab the Sea of Azov? You'll lose both the Azov and the Black Sea. And finally, what can Russia counter this with? Move the Black Sea fleet, or rather what's left of it, from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk. Then even the remnants of that fleet will be smashed by our drones. As one of the Russian military bloggers recently wrote, the Black Sea fleet can no longer defend itself. Oh dear, how sad. In general, shifting the operation from the Sea of Azov to the Black Sea is an opportunity to shut down the entire southern export oil corridor of Russia. Quick, bring this to the mothballed old man. Colorful slides with Victoria's pictures, otherwise he'll wear out all his 7-centimeter heels from anger. He'll wear down all those 7-centimeter heels of his. What did Lavrov say recently? Let's quote him. This is worse than piracy. They're not even pirates. Pirates rob and keep the loot for themselves, but these ones neither for themselves nor for others. Pure terrorism? Who was it that is even asking you at the racetrack? You know, sometimes I'm just amazed at how unclouded, astonishing, and utterly crystal clear their wretchedness is. These individuals, I mean. They attacked Ukraine and made a mess of themselves. For 5 years they haven't been able to achieve a single goal, and now they're shouting help because Ukraine is striking back, it turns out. You could at least be embarrassed in front of your own plebs. You've already painted nothing but victories for them. And now you're whining. How could this happen? Ukraine is striking back. So what should we do now? Call together the UN, the lottery, whoever else you can think of. Call your kindergarten teachers. So Patrushev has come out now. And he declared, amidst all this, another madman jumping around. Patrushev reminds me of some kind of vulture, always snooping around, constantly reporting, wandering about what's going on in the Kremlin. Russia's naval strategic nuclear forces are at full combat readiness, Patrushev stated. All threats coming from potential adversaries are taken into account in the development plans of the Russian Navy. Who dug up Patrushev in the first place? What is this, some kind of false start to a zombie apocalypse? Where do these communist mummies keep crawling out from? And did you notice that this Patrushev news about the strategic forces being at combat readiness? No one even cares anymore what kind of combat readiness they're in. I think, by the way, that Patrushev is actually one of the most ardent supporters of continuing the war and one of Putin's closest allies. Patrushev probably also thinks that it's just a little longer. Just a little longer and Russia will win. If you listen to Patrushev, he's completely out of touch with reality. I mean, his rhetoric. It's just like those Putin squads. Recently in an interview, he blamed Obama, blamed Biden, the West, the US, Britain, and the US want to destroy Russia. We're an indestructible power, we'll defeat everyone, and blah blah, and all that woof 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 meow meow. What do Obama or Biden have to do with you? You've been given the largest country in the world with such resources. You flushed it all down the toilet. But tankers aren't the whole story yet. Ukrainian drones, I want to tell you, are real extraterrestrial artifacts. They can not only destroy the Russian fleet, but also shoot down helicopters. There's an amazing video of a Ukrainian drone shooting down a Russian Me-28 Night Hunter helicopter. Let's take a look. Beautiful. After that hit, it immediately nosedived. The helicopter, and it was shot down in the settlement of Vyazovo. That's in Belgorod region, more than 100 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. You know, there's another point. They shoot down this helicopter, as you saw, over a field. The tail split in half right away. And apparently the cockpit just spiraled straight down from several hundred meters. Unlike the Ka-52, this Mi-28 doesn't have a full-fledged ejection system. No ejection system. So, most likely, the two-man crew didn't even have time to realize how they ended up at Kobzan's concert. And that's minus $20 million for such a helicopter. Well, on the other hand, if you're a night hunter, then you shouldn't be wandering around during the day, it turns out. And Ukraine and Ukrainians are truly performing a heroic feat. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we continue raising funds for EcoFlow charging stations for the Drone Systems Battalion of the 107th Brigade. The battalion is carrying out combat missions in the Pokrovsk direction near Dobropilya, one of the hottest spots. The soldiers have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Ми, військовослужбовці 2-го батальйону безпілотних систем «Фаворит», виконуємо бойові завдання по знищенню ворога на Покровському напрямку та в районі Добропілля. Звертаємось до Бориса Тисенгаузена та спільноти каналу Бориса з проханням допомогти закрити збір на придбання зарядних станцій для АКБ ударних дронів. Разом ми велика сила. Разом переможемо. Слава Україні! Героям слава!
Let's help our warriors. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There you can find Mono, Privat, and PayPal. For those who want to help from abroad, the QR code is always in the corner in case you're watching me on another channel. A special thank you. I say this to you in every episode, both from myself and from the dozens of units we've already helped together. Thank you so much. Well, apparently the Russian bots haven't received their manuals yet, so these are the kinds of comments showing up under yesterday's video. There was another raid by Russian bots. I specifically left this comment so you can find it there. Here, no one is even trying to hide. Nick Zakharov, Masha, and the comment, yes, why would our refineries suddenly stop working? Some are in the process of being restored, but right now the refineries are processing even more fuel due to high demand. Look, Putin is a bold sorcerer. His refineries process even more oil, even the ones that aren't working. And by the way, here's some news on the topic for Zakharova Masha, or maybe it's her, I don't know, from the Russian Foreign Ministry. News on the topic. Russia is starting to choke on its own oil, writes Bloomberg. Because of regular strikes on refineries, Moscow has encountered an unexpected problem. They're extracting oil, but they can't process it. And indeed, oil production continues, but there's nowhere to process it. Refineries are being shut down, so the crude oil has to be stored somewhere, but where? The market is saturated. According to Bloomberg, in July, processing volumes fell to their lowest level in more than 20 years. Well, talk about bad timing. For Russians, the second phase of the unmanned systems operation has begun. They just can't catch a break. But you know it's fine. Putin said everything will normalize. Russians need to trust Putin. Tighten your belts, endure a little longer, Russians, just a bit more. You've endured for 25 years and you need to hold on a little longer. Solovyov recently started saying on his show that in the 1990s, things were even worse. Do you understand what they're preparing Russians for? That it will be worse than the 1990s? And for what? Now, that's a good question. Russians should be asking themselves that before they go to sleep. What is all this for? Especially those Russians who fall asleep while waiting in line at the gas station. Oh, here's another comment. This one is actually one of my favorites. At least Russia still has some oil refineries left, but where are Ukraine's? That's exactly the essence of deep Russia. You destroyed our oil refinery back in 2022. And Ukraine has adapted its logistics so that now we don't have refineries, but we do have fuel. But you won't have either one. And now, news from tough Chelyabinsk. In Chelyabinsk, a driver who didn't want to wait in line for fuel shot at those who tried to stop him. As a result, a man who was shot in the stomach ended up in the hospital. Well, the driver was detained by the police, so it's basically like the Wild West over there. They're already shooting with both hands in the queue. What is going on? You know, I still haven't recovered from yesterday's fairy tales. The FSB's stories about Kyivstoner, about drones, about Russian children, this whole legend they've made up. Oh, by the way, it just occurred to me. A thought came to me. Maybe they picked Kyivstoner simply because his pseudonym has Kiev in it. You know, so that even those who write the most, so that even the deepest of the deep could understand who's behind all this, and it's Kyivstoner. Well, of course, obviously, it might seem crazy to us, but they could easily come up with something like that. In my opinion, you know, the FSB can only compete with the Russian Orthodox Church when it comes to cringe. But basically, they're the same structure, so they can't really compete with each other. It's been a while since we've talked about the Russian Orthodox Church, so here are some fresh updates for you. The Russian Orthodox Church has called panic attacks a sign of enslavement by Satan. Supposedly, real believers don't have panic attacks. Oh, the FSB branch has chimed in. Chechen, why are you panicking? 3 days in line. Now that's something, that's real entertainment. That's what Solovyov tells you. It's an attraction. Go back to the 90s. Another piece of news. The Russian Orthodox Church advised singing psalms while driving to avoid accidents and being late. This is not a joke. This is for real. Actual news. Of course, they constantly deliver incense to these rock priests just like to a barista. Well, basically, you shouldn't even try to understand the logic here. There isn't any. For example, if you ask them, how come your clergy still get into accidents from time to time? Do they not believe or what? Or maybe they just weren't singing psalms at that moment? By the way, should you pray for Putin while driving? Patriarch Kirill, for example, called on people to pray for the leadership of the Russian Federation, meaning for Putin. You know what's the scariest part? It's that if tomorrow they issue a decree to pray for Putin while driving, at least half of Russians will actually do it. That's how it is. And then trouble came from where it was least expected. China has suspended negotiations with Gazprom on the Power of Siberia 2 project. Beijing is demanding bigger discounts on gas. And China is just sitting there rubbing its hands together. So what can you do? The worse things get in Russia, the bigger the discounts for China, and the more China will take. The Chinese authorities are ready to sign a contract only if the price is at the domestic Russian level, $50 per 1,000 cubic meters. Just imagine that. What a twist. If the price is the same as for Russians, then we'll take your gas. So for delivering gas to China via Power of Siberia 2, Putin will actually have to pay extra out of Russians' pockets. Just imagine, along the route of this pipeline, in Russian towns and villages, there still won't be any gas, because they haven't been able to lay the pipeline there for years. But China, just across the border, will get gas at the same price as Russians inside Russia. Now that's some economic magic. Yes, Putin said that thanks to sanctions, and now thanks to the war, the Russian economy is doing better than anyone else. For comparison, before the sanctions, Europe was buying Russian gas at $270 per 1,000 cubic meters, but China demands to pay only $50. But that's not all. Here's another stab in the back. We are closing the door to Russians, announced Hungary's Minister of Defense, Romulus Rusinsendi. Hungary must restore the trust of its allies, and as for the Russians, we are closing the door to them, he stated. Don't forget, when you close the door, give Orban a kick out there too. Send him outside. He probably already has a little house somewhere in the Moscow suburbs. Anyway, old man Kabayev has managed things to this point. But now every day there will be news about the destruction of dozens of tankers, only this time in the Sea of Azov. Huge tankers. Now the real adventures are starting for the Russians. And you friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And let's help our warriors from the 107th Brigade. The link to donate is in the description of this video. And by the way, yesterday evening we managed to close the fundraiser for a very good fighter, Yura, and his comrades. Yura is just in shock. This morning he wrote, "I'm in shock. I didn't expect this." A huge thank you to everyone who took part. And we thank him as well. Thank you, Yura. It's people like you who keep Ukraine standing. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.